Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today we are hosting Daughter of Zion. She put out a piece called The Connection of Priest and Believer. I think this kind of cool. In recent episodes, I've been talking about something called the Big Reveal, and that's just a this and that. I've done hosting with Daughter of Zion in the past. I've done hosting with a lot of things in the past. To listen to all these things, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com, click on the podcast link, and enjoy. In Exodus 29, the ordination ceremony is outlined for Aaron and his sons. Exodus 29:4, and again in 40, verse 12, we will see that Aaron and his sons are to be washed with water at the door of the tent of meeting. It is a tent of meeting because it is where the ark was placed. There at the mercy seat, or rather just above it, God would quote-unquote meet with the high priest. The tent sported curtains that had angels worked into the tapestry loom work. The angels were to bar the way from anyone but the quote-unquote authorized person to enter. We as believers are told that Jesus washes us with water and with/by/through the word, rhemati in the Greek, in order to present us to the Father, Ephesians 5:26. The vestments of the priest are a fine twisted plant-based fiber that is said to be quote-unquote checkered in English, is better understood as embroidered, but the Hebrew word is actually tishbetz. This is strong. In ancient Israel, the tabernacle and its furnishing were crafted with great care and detail, reflecting the holiness and glory of God. The use of quote-unquote tishbetz is in priestly garments, such as the ephod, signified the beauty and craftsmanship dedicated to worship. Embroidery and checkered patterns were common in ancient Near Eastern cultures, often symbolizing status and divine favor. So, checkered is not far off after all, but the point is that it is intricate work and designed to be strikingly beautiful. The colors, however, do have real meaning. Gold, real gold, cut into thin strips that will twine into the thread itself or be worked into the quote-unquote pattern on the loom. Blue, or amethyst. Now, amethyst can be blue, and today it's rare. Bet it wasn't so rare back then. It can also turn blue over time from too much UV, as in sunlight. Then there is, quote-unquote, the purple, which is reserved for royalty, with the last being a crimson. So then we see colors in the New Testament. Blue, the sky, or water. We are washed with water with the Word. We are washed in the renewing of the mind. This is the work of the Holy Spirit. The color of the sky is prefigured as He is above and not below. It is possible that this might even be the color of the quote-unquote pavement, which when the men see God on the mountain, go back to Exodus and Mount Sinai, it's said to be like clear sky. So it is talking about heaven and the kingdom. Gold talks about the immutability and holiness of God. Purple is the royal color. All the people who were royal found this to be, quote-unquote, the color. But we are considered, quote-unquote, royal. This is because we are sons of God. Finally, of course, crimson has a double meaning, the stain of sin and the color of the one blood whose shedding was for all time. There was a turban, as it were, to mark the high priest out, with a mitre or crown or plate of gold that said, quote-unquote, holy unto the Lord. Where was it placed? Around the head, as in the intellect and emotional minds and wills, which are sanctified, quote-unquote, to God. So then, all this is nice, but so what? So what did the Old Testament priest actually ever do? Men did not approach the Lord. By the way, All this is being handed to Moses on the mountain, and meanwhile Aaron had yet to do the whole cow in the wilderness thing. But the priests approached the Lord. Men did not in this manner. The priest stood in the place of the firstborn. The priest worshipped. The priest took the carcass of the offerings that the sinners slew in tabernacle/temple and performed the prescribed ritual so that the offerer would be given forgiveness by God. The high priest bore sin. He bore the people upon his chest within the ephod comprised of the stones representing the tribes. The Urim and Thummim, or yes and no storm stones, were in the pouch, the ephod. So the priest also inquired of God for responses to issues. But today, what do they call this? Intercession. Ours is the power of intercession before holy God as sanctified, consecrated, sacerdotal. But most believers are too enmeshed in the world to service God. Oh gosh. I'm reading this from Daughter of Zion. I can just sit here and take the slap across the face. Yeah, you too. My goodness. Of the offerings, there were portions reserved so that food could be given, portions from the best of the land that the priest received and placed a memorial portion into fire before God. This was food, grain, wine, vegetables, fruit, and lots of protein in the form of meat. From the work they were fed. The people's tents came in to not only make sure the busy priest was fed, but also to ensure there was a collection of surplus, so wherever a need was, it would be met from, quote-unquote, the church, or rather, quote-unquote, tabernacle/temple. What are we said to be by Peter, no less? The holy nation, the royal priesthood. What did John say Jesus had done for us? Purchased us with his blood, a people to be priests unto his Father. But the priest also did other things. In the holy place, the priest kept the light on, kept the quote-unquote bread of present freshly replaced week after week, and consumed the stale, brought the incense in and made supplication of worship, thanksgiving, intercession by words before the mercy seat on the back side of the veil that was angel-imaged, and cordoned off the box from the men. But once per year, the high priest went in with blood. And this is Jesus' function. Once he was offered up and the debt was paid, the veil was removed. Now we all do this same function. We hold the communion and the presence at all times. We approach boldly, Hebrews 4:16, but properly. We are the priests. We intercede. We bring the needs. We inquire for answers. We are the prophets who respond to the people with the words of God that we received while we were in our inquiry and intercession. All that priests did and wore are the outward displays of the work of the believer and the fruit of the Holy Spirit, or character of Christ within the heart. No male priest could approach without flesh circumcision, but Paul tells us that the believer has a different circumcision, one of the heart, Romans 2:29. One last point here. Did you know that it was a thing in the Old Testament that one ought to circumcise their heart? Deuteronomy 10:16, quote, "Therefore circumcise the foreskin of your heart and be stiff-necked no longer," unquote. Where are we on this? Stiff-necked means self-willed. A little FYI to the church at a time of much turmoil. And that will do it for the Daughter of Zion and this episode of This and That. Until then.